Respected brothers and sisters, in the Islamic calendar we had Ramadan. It came and it went with all of its blessings. Inshallah ta'ala, we all made the most out of it. In His infinite mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set the calendar up in such a way that when we have a time of great virtue, while that is still in memory, while the memories of that are still fresh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promptly gives us another. And these opportunities, or these times if you like, can be considered as some of the great symbols of Islam, because of the fact that after all the most important bit of symbolism in Islam is that which continuously reminds us and reminds us of and points us to the purpose of our creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him, and therefore the symbols of Islam are always connected to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? There are no, other than 3 masajid, there are no sacred masjids that are symbolic in any particular way. Right? There's Masjid al-Haram, Masjid Nabawi, Masjid al-Aqsa, and masajid are places of worship. Right? And among the symbols of Islam are actually all acts, not places, not monuments, but all acts. So the adhan is a symbol of Islam, the salah is a symbol of Islam, right? You know, and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word sha'ira for this, right? Its plural is sha'air. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when it comes to the symbol of Islam, to venerate them and respect them is part of one's taqwa. وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. And therefore venerating and respecting the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ultimately about connecting ourselves to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in terms of times that are symbolic, that are sha'air, we have Ramadan, we have those additional kind of intense times of blessing within Ramadan, like Laylatul Qadr, like the last 10 nights and so on. We have in addition things like the Hajj, right? We have Ashura, and we have these dates and these times spread throughout the year and throughout the Islamic calendar. Many months in the Islamic calendar have some sort of significance, some sort of virtue, and with each significant time, with each significant month, and with the virtues of the month, there is often something for us to do. There are a'mal, actions expected of us, right? First of all, as a general point, what does it mean to respect this, right? Respecting it is to anticipate it, to be prepared for it, to be ready for it, to look forward to it, and to take advantage of these times, right? Another time is now here, right? And we are now, it is the 25th of Dhul Qa'dah, right? And Dhul Qa'dah itself is one of the 4 sacred months of the year, right? Inna iddata shuhuri inda Allah 12 shahran yama khalaqa Allahu as-samawati wal arda minha arba'atun hurum. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the fact that 12 months are ordained for the year, since the time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth, He immediately follows up by saying minha arba'atun hurum. Of those 12 months, 4 are sacred, and their sanctity is tied to something that was even existent pre-Islam, which was that in these 4 months, even the pagan Arabs respected this, in these 4 months all forms of warfare, all fighting was prohibited, because of the sanctity of these months. And these were Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram and Rajab. Right? 3 are consecutive and Rajab is after a gap. Now, I think it goes without saying that, and this is a little relevant side point, that if we don't know which month is where, if our children don't know which month is where, and what is going on and what is the significance of the months, what are their names, what in the world am I talking about here, then immediately an action to take is learn the months of Islam, right? Make sure your children know them, and there are nasheeds and things like that you can rely on that will help them learn, right? And often we introduce children at a very young age to these things, they learn and then they forget, and then nobody comes back to revisit these things, because even the adults aren't quite aware, can't say all 12 months together, and we certainly aren't aware of which Islamic date it is today. And if we don't do that, you know, no sin has been committed. At least we should be aware of the most important dates in the month and which months they are and when it is. And this is partly our disconnect with the Islamic calendar is one of the reasons why suddenly these days of virtue arrive and we're taken by surprise. Suddenly it's like the first time we hear it from the Imam or for somebody or somebody nowadays sends something on social media, we're like, oh, and we're not quite psychologically prepared for it. We've not booked days off. We've not had time to make the necessary adjustments so that we can make the most out of these days. So when it comes to what has arrived now, we are in one of the sacred months, Dhul Qa'dah. The next month is Dhul Hijjah, right? Dhul Hijjah is significant mainly because it is the month in which we have the Hajj. That much everybody knows, right? But sometimes Hajj can come and go, and we're only reminded of it because of Eid, right? And Eid because of the cultural aspect of Eid, the social aspect of Eid, right? But Eid too is marked by worship, right? And before it, the days have a great significance, and this is what we have to be reminded of. Not just any old significance. Everybody ask yourselves, not ask, but remind yourselves, right, how you felt about the last 10 days of Ramadan. Right? How did you feel then? What importance did you give it? You know, we were in here and we had 3, 4, 5 safs, right, full for tahajjud, right, in the middle of the night. We're all fasting, last 10 days, everybody's ready for it and prepared for it. Where did the sanctity of those days come from? How do we know that those last 10 days are so significant? From where? From where did we know? From the Quran and from the Sunnah, yes? So what does the Quran and the Sunnah say about these, about the days that are coming? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran takes an oath, right? In Surah Al-Fajr. It is the only place in which he takes an oath by certain days in the year. We know in Wal Asr he takes an oath by time. Here he takes an oath by dawn. Wal Fajr. Fajr means dawn. There's lots of reasons why Fajr is important. It is the best time of the day, the most important time of the day. The mornings of this ummah are blessed. The Prophet ﷺ said, Fajr is the most blessed time of the day. The Sunnah of Fajr is the most important nafilah of the day, the most virtuous. The Prophet ﷺ didn't give it up. In the Hanafi madhab, it's almost wajib. It's almost wajib. Right? The Prophet ﷺ never missed it even when he was traveling. Right? And the great virtue of performing Fajr, of getting up for Fajr, performing it in the masjid, and just generally the idea that our day is supposed to start from there, right? And that the mornings are blessed, and that if the start of the day is blessed, and the rest of the day is blessed, and that blessing begins with the prayer of Fajr. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues the series of oaths. Wal Fajr wa layalin ashr. And by the 10 nights, right? Wal Shaf'i wal Watr. And by the even one and the odd one. Right? And the vast majority of scholars say that the 10 nights are the 10 of Dhul Hijjah. The first 10 of Dhul Hijjah. There's a minority opinion that it's the last 10 of Ramadan, but it's a minority opinion, right? A weaker opinion. The vast majority of scholars say that this is the last, the first 10 nights of Dhul Hijjah. And in the Quran, night and days is synonymous. There's plenty of evidence for that. Some ulama reconcile between the last 10 nights of Ramadan and the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah by saying the most virtuous nights of the year are the last 10 nights of Ramadan. The most virtuous days of the year are the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Of the year. How many years have these 10 days? For me as well, how many times have these 10 days come and gone and we've paid no heed to them? Right? And the reason for it is because our relationship with the blessings of Allah, with virtuous days, virtuous nights, with particular times in the calendar, take on a certain cultural life of their own, right? And sometimes it's just people just culturally just become more connected to one and neglect another. That does not mean the other is less important. It just means that something went wrong culturally. Culturally, we've just become somebody somewhere in our culture, in our society, gave more importance to one, didn't talk much about the other, and that just stayed, right? That just stayed, and that became culture. But the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are as virtuous, and according to some scholars, more virtuous than the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So they're here from the first of Dhul Hijjah. And in these days, generally what we are asked to do, what we're expected to do, is the kind of things that we did in Ramadan, in the last 10 days of Ramadan in particular. It's the basic principle is the same. Fast all the way up to the first, all the way up to Eid, the first 9 days. Fasting. The Prophet ﷺ, in one hadith he's reported to have fasted all of them. In another hadith he's reported to have not fasted all of them. And this is reconciled by saying that the Prophet ﷺ, acknowledging the virtue of all of them, didn't necessarily fast every single one, right? But a person can, or at least we can combine. For example, if you don't normally fast Mondays and Thursdays, if you don't normally fast Mondays and Thursdays, if you normally don't fast the fast of Dawood, of alternate days, then this is perhaps one of the best times of the year to do that, as far as nafil fasts go, right? The Prophet ﷺ said that no action is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than good deeds on this, pious deeds on these 10 days. There is no other time of the year in which pious deeds is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than these 10 days. The Sahaba asked him, what, even jihad? Even struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, putting one's life at risk? And the Prophet ﷺ said, even that, unless a person actually sacrifices his life. Right? It's even more virtuous than participating in jihad. The only person who exceeds the virtue of these days is the one who actually gives up his life. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ attached immense reward. The ninth is the day of Arafah. Of course, we have a lot of people who follow Hajj and so on. It's all over TVs and so on. But Ibn Rajab rahmatullahi alayhi explains, and he says that Hajj has been mandated as one of the 10 pillars of Islam for all Muslims. Yet, it is conditional upon a person's ability, financial capacity, circumstantial capacity, the ability to make the journey, physical capacity. It's all of these things. That means that many people, perhaps the vast majority of people, right, if you just go by stats, will not be able to perform Hajj, right, in any given year. That's obvious, right? 2 million people might perform Hajj, the rest of humanity is not performing Hajj. Correct? And it could even be argued that the majority of Muslims may not be able to perform Hajj in their lifetime. Right? Because most people are not wealthy enough, especially nowadays. Right? Things like doing Hajj on foot, which apparently Hassan radiallahu anhu did 20 times. Some people do it, but these things are becoming harder and harder, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he having given all of that amazing blessing to the person who performs Hajj, one of the greatest deeds, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, he also did not deprive people, the majority who don't do Hajj, and he gave them the virtues of the first 10 days. And he made these virtues relevant, significant and virtuous for every single Muslim wherever they come. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like He will forgive people on the day of Arafah, who are in Hajj, will also forgive people a year's sins who are fasting on the day of Arafah. Right? And of course, these days remain the most beloved days to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in which we can worship Him. So think about what prep you took for the last 10 days. Think about your attitude towards the last 10 days of Ramadan. Activate that now for the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Right? I'm going to talk a little bit more inshallah at another opportunity, or perhaps Ustaz Sabih or one of the other Imams will do about Qurbani and things like that. We'll come to that inshallah. But today I want to talk about